Welcome back to the Sports Fix Live across the Sports Fix Radio Network. Hey, look, man, you got a double dose of news in that last one, man. And I realized that I fired the college football one instead of the news break. I said, oh, hell, we'll just go with the double up there, man. Welcome back to the Sports Fix. J-Rock back with you live, as we said, across the radio network here, wherever you're listening to us. Thank you so much for tuning in. As we roll on in hour two, getting ready to be joined by Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan. We'll talk about that college football championship game coming, Buckeyes and Ducks and all of that. Maybe talk a little Browns here. Who knows what we're going to talk about, man. Talk a little Buckeyes hoops. Big win for them last night. Loving came through. I'll tell you, that was a good game. Couple great basketball games last night, too. Did you guys see, not to brush past the Buckeyes, but, man, Kentucky, Ole Miss, almost. They had them. If, really, the one shot with a minute left or whatever that they called a 2, that it would have been a 3 if the foot wasn't just barely on the three-point line. That 1 point difference would have won that game in regulation for Ole Miss. But, man, that was a hell of a game, man. And Kentucky held on. Give it to them. Still undefeated, but that was a run for their money for sure. Buckeyes as well come through big last night. We'll talk about all that, talk some Bucks all around and more with Dan Wismar next. You can keep talking to us all the time on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at the Sportsfix CLE. I'm going to go to the phone lines now. Dan Wismar, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well, J-Rock. Good to be with you.
Hey, good to have you, as always, and, you can just pick up wherever you want here with what we've been talking about today. I screwed up Monday, as you may have heard me say last segment, talking to you. Should have never got on my high horse and said, well, at least we're not worried about coaches or nothing here in Cleveland. At least we made progress. Do not let me say stupid things anymore. Like, reach through the phone and just tell me, J-Rock, did you just wake up in Cleveland today? And I'll know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, really. How long have you been around this town? I will say you respond when I ask you for something. You responded. I mean, I asked you for a selfie the other day, and boom, there it was up on Facebook. So I got everybody got a chance to look at your black eye, and
there you go.
You just set the bar up there, and you jumped right over it. But it's how foolish of you to commented about Brown's front office stability. Before Valentine's Day.
I know.
That was crazy.
Unbelievable, man. And of course, here we go. Whatever. Like I said, it's not even Christmas, but in our line of work, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I wish it didn't, because I would much rather. I was telling a couple of people this morning, putting together the show. I said, man, I'd much rather it just be a day where I'm digging for stuff. I don't mind if I have to struggle to put a show together. Like, boy, can we talk about some lacrosse today? Because there's really the Browns haven't given us anything. Manziel, nobody's given us anything to talk about today, Anybody got a cricket game we can talk about? Nope, never, ever have to dig that deep in the box around here, man.
I got to say, one thing that surprised me about this story that's breaking this morning about Kyle Shanahan and wanting out, the thing that surprised me, and I speculated this to you on the show as the season was going along, is there was more and more, as Hoyer started to fade and as the drumbeat for Johnny started becoming louder and louder, I wondered aloud on the show whether, which camp Shanahan was in. I was guessing that he was in the pro-Johnny camp. What I'm hearing from you and from maybe others today too is that doesn't look like that was the case, that maybe it's Ray Farmer's commitment to Johnny going forward that has Kyle Shanahan looking for a way out of town, that he's been close enough to the situation that he doesn't want any part of coaching John Manziel, and that's a little bit surprising to me, because as we went through the season, it kind of, it was just more of an educated guess than anything else, but I thought that maybe Shanahan was one of the guys on the staff that was lobbying for Johnny to get his shot.
You did, and I'll tell you what, part of me wondered that same exact thing that you're saying, because he seemed like the kind of guy that may get into that, but then again, he had already kind of been there, done that once before, even though we're talking about a completely different physical specimen over there in Griffin in Washington. But regardless, looking at next season, and this is where my thought is, man, if he gets out no matter what, because what you just said, if he was in that camp that he thought, hey, this is Johnny Football, man, he's got to, obviously he had a rough start, but this guy is going to be what we thought he was going to be, then I'm nowhere near as quick to look to bail. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm going, hey, I want to be the guy when they talk about who got Johnny Manziel going, who was the guy, who was the coordinator, whatever. I want to be that guy. So that screams a lot to me if you're looking for reading between the lines there and the tea leaves there, because that's something that would make me interested, especially if the front office is pushing him, because now hey, I'm not going to get any problems with my guy. He's going to be the guy. We're going to get all the resources put towards this guy. We're going to move forward. That, too, says volumes about things as well, because it kind of fits right into what you just said.
Yeah, and I guess you could look at it two ways here. And on the one side, I don't have a whole lot of respect for any coach who's saying to himself, hey, man, we might have a bad record next year, and I might get fired at the end of next season,
True.
so I better quit now.
Yes.
That's a weasel. That's the guy who won't accept a challenge. That bothers me if that's the
Agreed.
thinking on Kyle Shanahan's part. And yes, the schedule is tougher next year. And yes, our quarterback situation is very unsettled. And yes, it's easy to look down the line and see a train wreck coming in 2015. Believe me, I know that. On the other side of it, if in fact there's this kind of dysfunctionality in the front office and you've got non-football people texting play suggestions to the offensive coordinator during games, I frankly doubt that. Have you ever seen a coach check
Never
his
heard of that
cell
before.
phone on the sidelines to see who's texting him? And even if it is Jimmy Haslam, but at the same time, if that stuff is going on, yes, indeed, this front office is dysfunctional, and yes, indeed, you can say, sure, Kyle Shanahan is more than justified if he wants to, catch the first bus out of town because he sees this thing coming down. If he doesn't see an end to that or a solution to that kind of meddling by front office people, and if that is in fact going on, then sure, you've got to say, well, yeah, maybe if I was in his shoes, I'd want to, float my resume around the league a little bit as well. So you can look at it both ways. Like I said, I question the intestinal fortitude of a guy who's already worrying about getting fired at the end of next season and what might happen. If you got confidence in yourself, you're going to find work in this league at some point in time. But then again, if it's as screwed up as some people are reporting that it is, then it's hard to fault the guy too much.
For sure. And again, this is just two guys with their opinions, and I'm speculating as far as, again, I don't know anything with that play calling thing, but my thought is there's truth to each part of this, and it's like you just said. I do believe. I don't need to believe. I know for a fact things I saw and heard myself and from people that I know, that the stuff with the pressure and all that's all true. We all knew that was going on all along, all of that. The other thing with the play calling, as you said, I can see that easily as a function of there's questions about my play calling, so let's deflect that by throwing the idea out there that other people were influencing or attempting to influence my play calling. So now, there's ambiguity about who was, calling, and I could definitely see some protecting your own neck as far as that goes. And that's why I think this is one of those three sides to the story kind of thing, and we need to look through it and see. But the fact that any of that exists does still show that it is not this thing is not just completely turned the corner as far as they still need to delineate responsibilities, and they need more separation between who does what and stay out of each other's business, because that's still some issues that whether it's 1999 or 2015, we're still having them in one form or another.
Right, and like you say, it's three sides to the story. We've talked about two of them. The third side is disgruntled past front office people,
yep,
which basically means Mike Lombardi leaking to Jason LaCanfora,
or Joe
and
yeah,
LaCanfora, spouting some stuff on the internet about dysfunction in the Browns front office because Mike Lombardi and maybe Joe Banner want there to be dysfunction in the Browns front office to make themselves look better. So, that's maybe the third leg of that three-legged stool that we're looking at here, where, you've got some guys, and maybe LaConfore's sources in the Browns front office pretty much dried up when Lombardi, walked out the door.
Very possible.
You could just call that, making stuff up.
Very, very possible what you've got there. And I know you were listening earlier with John, and I boil it back down to I love Mike Pettine. I think that he can develop into the guy here as a head coach, and I just want, if it's little things, that's cool. I mean, I get it. There's going to be bumps in the road in going from miserable to, the opposite side of that, whatever the high end of that is. I get it. It's not just a flip the switch kind of thing, but I don't want things to fall off the tracks and potentially lose what I think could be your coach for the next foreseeable future in a guy like Mike Pettine. And I can easily see that happening because, as John pointed out, he has no stature, he has no standing, he's still lucky to be here no matter what. He's only got 1 year behind him. So I don't want to see that, because then we really are kicking the legs off the stool and starting over all again.
Yeah, that's true, and I think we all saw some things, and I think the local media and even the national media, as John said, he's in that group that looked on Pettine and the job he did in Cleveland and had good things to say about him, and saw some positives there that maybe we haven't seen in the last couple, incarnations of this front office, and you don't want to see that go, and more than anything else, what you want is some stability, no matter who it is. So yeah, it would be sad if he is undermined, or if Jimmy Haslam's impatience with the process and the long slog forward, causes him to pull the trigger next season, and maybe he gets romanced by some big name that comes available, or some big name college guy, or whoever it might be, and you can see that happening. You just better be right if you make that move.
The other thing is too, and we'll get more into solids about this when things change with Kyle Shanahan, but if he is not here, and I'm not saying that I think he's the best offensive coordinator or anything like that. I thought that he did some good things early with some questionable pieces, but I mean, obviously, I see Vashon in the chat room. I mean, I question things like not utilizing your backs in the passing game more and different things like that, but, how much of that is the function of attrition and the pieces that you had too? Not throwing the ball to the backs, but different things. I don't think he's the worst. He's far from the best. My point is, no matter what you think he is, for all this talk of stability, just because Mike Pettine is still the coach, just because Ray Farmer is still the general manager, just because Jim O'Neill is still the defensive coordinator, when you change the offensive coordinator, unless you find somebody who's going to run close to exactly what Shanahan was doing, you're still going to be scrapping the offense again, which means a young quarterback, whether it's Manziel, whether, whatever, young running backs and receivers, they're all learning a new offense again. And that's a bad thing, too, for the aspect of trying to gain some continuity offensively.
No doubt. Yeah, you're so right. Starting over again on offense is starting over again with half of your football team. And that's gonna be growing. It's gonna be painful enough, because they're gonna bring in some wide receivers, and they're gonna be bringing in probably at least one additional quarterback. You hope that it's at least one veteran, and you'd hope that they would also draft to the position, because right now there's a great big vet nothing there unless you re-sign Hoyer, and that's a placekeeper. That's a temporary Band-Aid on the position, and not a long-term answer. So, yeah, it's going to be new for everybody, and the new system just complicates things, and the schedule is tougher. So, yeah, it's we said a couple weeks ago, or after the final game, that we were pretty much back to where we were a year ago, not knowing who that big guy is, and we talked on Monday, and I heard you talking with John. It's the worst-kept secret in the NFL that you've got 8 or 9, maybe 10 at the most elite quarterbacks, and those are the teams that are still playing. Until you get one, you're not going to be playing in the middle of January.
Brother,
that's just the sad truth.
You know why people talk about guys like Joe Thomas, Alex Mack being so valuable? Alex Mack could go to any system in the NFL and just be dropped in. Why? Because in the time he's been here, he's learned the West Coast scheme. He's learned like 2 different versions